Hello. Thank you for joining me again on this episode of The Crypt with Brian the Writer. You may notice that the background's a little different today. Part of the reason for that is the weather outside is very cold, and the crypt itself gets really, really cold during the winter. So as hardy as I am, having grown up in Illinois and Minnesota, it was too cold for me. So I moved it upstairs, but I brought the lamp with me, so a little bit of ambiance. Anyway, for those of you who are turning in and have listened to chapter 1, 2, and 3 of Crimson Tassels, I am here with chapter 4. This is likely going to be the last chapter that I record, unless somebody protests and says, yes, I desperately need you to record more of these for one reason or another. I'm probably going to record something else after this. So anyway, without further ado, here is the 4th chapter of Crimson Tassels. Chapter 4. The Itsy Bitsy Spider. Jack tried to remember a time when he was happier, but he couldn't. On top of it all, he managed to get everything inside the house before the rain started. In the distance, he could see the lightning strike something on the ground over the horizon. He wondered how often things were struck around here and how good the lightning rod was on top of the house. The house looked different than when he was here before, but to be fair, it was early spring at that time. The farm fields surrounding the house had been freshly plowed. The planting was in progress. It rained a little, but the farmers said it was dry enough to get the corn in the ground. Watching the tractors pulling the planters behind them was surprisingly therapeutic. He left their bags sitting at the bottom of the stairs while he brought in the things from the hardware store. After consulting with Elizabeth, he put the cleaning supplies in the kitchen. Then he found the coffee that Rita had brought and started making some. It was going to be a long day. He knew Elizabeth would have him cleaning soon enough. Maybe he would get extra husband points if he started cleaning the kitchen right away. He was never one for hay fever, but the dust was really starting to bother him. With every step he took, 30 years of dust accumulation followed him like Pigpen from the Peanuts cartoon. Leaving the front door open, he propped open the back door to try and get a nice cross breeze going. Perhaps use the warm summer wind to suck the dust out of the house. To him, it seemed like the house hadn't been cleaned in years. As he started wiping down the counters, he thought of what Mr. Gulliver said. While it was a grim story the old man had told, he wondered how much of it was just a fairy tale locals made up to justify the inability to sell an old farmhouse with no acreage attached to it. Maybe someone did actually die in the house. Who knows? Maybe they were even murdered. But a triple murder-suicide seemed far-fetched. He'd have to go to the library and see if he could find any news clippings about the Anderson farm. After wiping the counter, the cloth was already in desperate need of a good rinsing, but he was pleased that underneath the years of dust, the countertops looked largely intact. The dirt of the kitchen mocked him, and Jack wondered how much cleaning would be required before Elizabeth would declare the house suitable for habitation. Just then, he heard Rita coming down the stairs. "Hey, Rita, did you lose my wife upstairs?" "Oh, no. She wanted a moment to herself." She pointed to the cup in his hand. "Found the coffee, I see. It's already looking more like a home instead of an empty old house." She stopped at the edge of the living room as she made her way toward the door. "You kids know how to reach me." She looked down at the countertops and then met Jack's eyes. "Cleaning? You really are a good guy. You need to spend more time with Hal." "I'll see what I can do with him. Thanks for everything, Rita. I really appreciate it." "You're welcome. I'm going to check on your wife tomorrow morning while you're at work and show her around our booming metropolis." "Sounds good. I know she'll appreciate it." "Good luck tomorrow," Rita said. He watched her walk out the door and toward her car. It was just starting to rain outside, and her closing the car door seemed to be the weather signal to open up and drench the world outside. He stood by and watched as her tail lights disappeared down the road. A sudden weight descended upon him. The reality sunk in that they were all alone out here. He stood there, leaning against the door frame, looking out at the puddles of water on the driveway. It all seemed a little surreal. A new house, new job, new marriage. There was a lot of change to take place all at once. His parents were overjoyed when he and Elizabeth told them they were engaged to be married. In spite of everyone's reassurances, starting their new lives was overwhelming. He didn't want to disappoint anyone, least of all Elizabeth. Wiping away the last bit of grime from the counter, he moved to sweeping the floor of the cobwebs and the dead flies that accumulated below the rear window. As he swept, he noticed a door which had remained so concealed he almost missed it completely. He was pretty sure he didn't go down there when he did the inspection. The gust of air behind the door reeked of the acrid smell of dust and disuse. The ambient light of the kitchen just barely illuminated the outline of a switch on the wall and the landing atop a set of stairs. Descending into the blackness below, his mind raced through all the discussions he'd had about the house, and he thought he remembered someone mentioning a cellar of some sorts, perhaps a root cellar or a tornado shelter. He reached for the switch to illuminate the depths when an intense feeling of dread stayed his hand. "Come on, Jack, pull yourself together. You're not a child." Shaking his head against the adolescent fear of the dark, Jack felt an old switch plate. On it were 2 push buttons. His thumb grazed something under the switch, which had an unexpected texture, making him pull his hand back. Marshalling his resolve, he boldly reached forward. A flash of light sprang up at him from the bottom of the stairs. The light backlit a huge object only inches from his nose. As his eyes struggled to bring the object into focus, it moved, sending chills up his spine. He jumped back from the unidentified thing and stumbled into the kitchen, scrambling away with a yelp. Something grabbed a hold of his arms. In his moment of startled terror, he tried to bat it away. "What are you doing?" a very confused Elizabeth asked. Jack stammered. "What's the matter, tough guy? Did the dark scare little Jackie?" "No, something in the stairwell." Elizabeth stepped over her husband and looked into the lit space. "Oh, this must be the cellar Rita told me about. She said she'd show it to us, but she forgot. Well, sweetie, it looks like we have a spider in the cellar. That's your department. It was in your vows, remember?" Jack got to his feet. "Oh, right. After the part about back rubs and mani-pedis. I remember now." He looked over her shoulder back into the space he had so lubberly exited. In front of them, trying desperately to get to safety, was a common house spider. Indeed, Dominus Arrhenius. Sure, he can dome us somewhere else. Kill that thing. You know how much I hate them. Elizabeth shivered and scratched her arms reflexively, mentally brushing away phantom spiders crawling all over her. Jack went to the counter and grabbed a paper towel. Moving back to the stairwell, he squished the spider between his fingers. It made a satisfying pop, indicating the spider's reign of terror was over. He used the rest of the paper towel to remove the spider web from the entryway. "Well, there you are, milady. Free of spiders." She patted him on the head. "My hero. I wonder what the heck's down there." "Not sure, but I do know it's ours. Let's take a look." Jack could tell the lights were an afterthought by the way the electrical wiring had been strung. It was a little scary, but it looked basically intact. "Hey, if you want to buy me an expensive present, you can have the house rewired." As the two descended the stairs into the cellar, she said, "I can't tell if you're kidding or not." "Totally not kidding. The wiring is a little terrifying. I don't mind fixing plumbing, but electricity is out of my lane." The cellar wasn't finished, and the floor was composed mainly of rock and dirt. The cellar was accessible by a door to the outside of the house as well. In one corner were 3 empty plastic garbage cans and a shelf with tarps and old paint cans. Pointing to the garbage cans and tarps, he said, "Well, those should come in handy." Jack turned from the plastic garbage cans to see his wife staring at something on the table. Her hands hung at her sides. Her mouth was slightly open, and her eyes glassed over. She seemed to be having a conversation in her head, all to herself. Elizabeth was prone to short fits where she sat encapsulated in her own thoughts. This, however, was different. His wife wasn't simply talking to herself. She was engaged in a deeper conversation with something or someone unseen. It scared him. Jack touched Elizabeth's elbow, seemingly bringing her out of her internal dialogue. Looking over at him, she smiled, indicating the old Elizabeth had returned. "Sorry, I was spacing out there for a minute. Look at all of this. Amazing that the family would just leave all of this hanging there." Facing them, a collection of tools hung from a pegboard. The old workbench was curiously devoid of tools, with the exception of an old axe that looked like it had once been a formidable tool. Now, covered in rust, it had seen better days. A small tag on it had one word, evidence, across the top of it, but most of the tag was torn off at some point. Jack pulled off the tag and threw it into the trash can sitting at the end of the workbench. Elizabeth ran her finger over the time-worn handle, leaving a trail of dust in the wake of her finger. She pulled back suddenly and violently, almost smacking Jack in the face. Holding her finger, a tiny bead of blood formed where a sliver embedded itself into her flesh. Ouch! Damn it! Jack quickly grabbed her hand. Are you okay? Yeah. She put her finger in her mouth and licked the blood away. Just a little sliver. This thing is pretty creepy, but useful. It'll take some steel wool and maybe some oil, but I bet that old axe would hold a nice sharp edge. Looks like it's been sitting here for some time. Elizabeth turned and put her hands around her husband's waist. Let's get out of the cellar, okay? The chill from her hands seeped through his clothing, as if she'd held 2 ice cubes on him, which was strange considering the temperature and humidity in the cellar were almost at tropical levels. Hey, sweetie, are you okay? I'm all right. The cellar gives me the creeps. I just want to get back upstairs and back to cleaning. All right, I tell you what, you only have to come down here when spiders need killing, he said with a wry smirk. They started up the stairs. She glared back at him. Not funny, Jack. Stepping into the kitchen, she practically shut the door on him as he cleared the threshold of the stairway. They looked at each other for a moment. Dusty from the day so far, and they had a long way to go. Something in the cellar had scared his wife, so he'd have to keep her out of there. He felt her hands again. Although they were still cold, they were warming up. Are you sure you're okay? Something down there seemed to put the fear of God into you, and nothing ever scares my wife. Jack reflexively pulled Elizabeth in close, and for a brief moment he thought he felt her pull away. She stared at him, looking like a scared child who had just asked an embarrassing question. No, it's just a ton of stuff to take in all at once. She was so beautiful. Even in her hair covered in spider webs, she could probably walk into a beauty pageant and win first place. He leaned in close, opening his mouth in delicious anticipation, his body suddenly stiffening with lustful desire. Not so fast there, Mr. Milburn. You need to keep it under control, or we're not going to have anywhere to sleep or do other things tonight. By the way, she said, licking his bottom lip, cleaning the kitchen is so incredibly sexy. She quickly backed up from him, retracting her hands. You finish the kitchen. I'm working on the bedroom upstairs. I only came down to take a short break. The dust was threatening to overtake me. Whoever's done first can start on the bathroom. Jack felt a little hurt by his machismo being shut down, but she'd noticed the kitchen, and that was a small victory. I sure do love that woman. I wonder if I'll ever stop worrying about her. He watched her walk up the stairs and disappear into the bedroom. Jack Milburn, philosophy professor, spider killer, sex machine, and devoted husband, turned back to the task of wiping down the inside of the kitchen cabinets. It would be good to get them clean before he put the rest of the food away that Rita had wisely left inside the bags. Judging by the dust and spider webs, they hadn't been clean in quite some time. For the next few hours, they worked in their separate rooms. Jack thought about his wife's reaction to the cellar. It was like she was terrified of what might be down there, or maybe something in the house, but her excuse made sense. It was easy to see how too many new experiences could overwhelm them. One of the things he loved about her was her insistence that he know everything about her and her family before they got married. When she first brought up the idea, he figured she was going to tell them something awful, like they were a mafia family or something. The truth was more benign. They were just good people who worked hard and whose ship had come in. She brought quite a bit of money into the marriage, enough that they could live comfortably off her trust fund for the rest of their lives, but neither one of them wanted that kind of lifestyle. He wanted to teach and have a professional life. She wanted to be a housewife, to enjoy the normal things in life, if only for a little while, and that suited them just fine. Behind him, the sound of feet bounding down the stairs interrupted Jack's scrubbing of the remaining spot of dirt in the kitchen, stubbornly refusing to give in. Elizabeth called from halfway up the stairs, "You should see the bedroom." Jack playfully raced through the living room and grabbed Elizabeth's hand as she pulled him up the stairs. She threw open the door and motioned inside as if she was presenting the grand ballroom at the Waldorf Astoria, and Jack got a whiff of oil, soap, and the vague factory smell of their new mattress. Her efforts certainly paid off. In place of the dust-ridden, broken-down bedroom he remembered from the tour, it looked like a completely different room. She'd removed the cobwebs, pulled down the beat-up shades, and evicted the dust bunnies. Elizabeth even enlisted an old bed sheet to cover the window, which did a better job of shading the room than the old shades. The old wooden wardrobe, dresser, and mirror desk looked almost youthful with their new coat of polish. A pile of old clothes, which had been dug out from inside the dresser drawers, now lay in the hallway. Wow, you certainly got farther in here than I got downstairs. Well, sweetie, I'm a woman. He feigned incredulity. It's a hard word to say. Hey, what's that supposed to mean? Well, you know, husbands try, wives do. Jack laughed. Besides, the kitchen was far dirtier. That stove is ancient, and it looked like the last thing they cooked in its place was a space alien. Will it work for tonight? Oh yeah, nothing is going to stop this husband. I got it all cleaned up. I'm just glad we grabbed the oven cleaner from Gulliver's. She pulled him close by the shoulders from his shirt. Look at you, already talking like a local. I'm impressed. It's sort of hot. She leaned in close to him. So hot, you know what I want to do right now? Throw a wild sex party? No, better. I want to go through the closet. Wow, you sure do know how to turn a guy on. She laughed. Seriously, though, back to work, Dr. Milburn. We have tons more to do before we can call it a night. Yes, ma'am, he said. To Elizabeth, the house was her project, and she'd tolerate no slacking on anyone's part. He loved that about her. Thank you for joining me for Chapter 4 of my novel, Crimson Tassels. It's available on Amazon, and if you come to any of my shows this year, I can get a signed copy to you. You could also contact me for a signed copy through PayPal and other mechanisms. All right, thank you very much, and have a great day.